The socialists and their allies, the small Dialogue for Hungary party, gather to watch the election results. Some people arrive with initial optimism. It doesn't last long. As the results are finally announced, it quickly emerges that Viktor Orbán has secured another two-thirds majority. In this film, we consider what has enabled Orbán to gain such political dominance.
There was a disappointment after this in the left.
How? Since 1988, has Orbán developed a populist, authoritarian, right-wing message?
So Orbán saw the opportunity that if he moves to the right from the liberal center, then he can target a larger political space.
And how he has exploited the weaknesses of modern democracy.
And this is tribalism, which is rather post-truth phenomenon in the sense that you really want to win elections on the basis of your tribe. And you don't have to be a loved figure, you don't have to be popular in the classical sense.
The premise of Orbán's regime, which is ethnic and religious denominational and national, is not doubted and discussed and attacked by anybody.
Viktor Orbán's first reinvention is to become a dynamic centre-right politician. He offers a mix of free market and welfare policies aimed at upper working class and middle class families.
In 1994, when the then ruling party, the Hungarian Democratic Forum, lost its leader, József Antal, then Prime Minister, died, and there was a huge vacuum and the party basically collapsed without having an appropriate leader. So Orbán saw the opportunity that if he moves to the right from the liberal center, then he can target a larger political space, which might be useful for him later, and you can see how successful he was.
At that time, he was calling for different kind of changes. And his vision was really center-right in the sense that it's a meritocratic society that Hungary should be, where more work is simply more valued. And it was a regime that was mainly built on the middle class and the upper middle class.
The first Hungarian government, freely elected Hungarian government in 1990, was already a very strongly nationalist government, and already protesting against liberal or perceived liberal ideas such as gender equality, such as anti-racism, such as liberal internationalism, such as the European idea, and so on and so forth. And this was immediately resisted very strongly, but the right in the first phase, here and in Poland and other places, was a very weak and ideologically very confused and very divided force. This has been the first politician in Eastern Europe to really create a unified, strong, ideologically motivated right-wing force was Viktor Orbán.
The thing is that in Hungary, I think that usually non-material consideration, symbolic considerations override and exceed in their importance, the importance of material gains and material transfers. Practically what happened between 1998 and 2002 is that yes, there was a rather solid economic growth, but I do think that this election was not decided on the basis of the economic messages. Yes, the socialists promised big welfare, but I think what it was more about is two different worldview. And Orbán was running a rather aggressive nationalist rhetoric even back then, while way more moderate than right now. And compared to him, Péter Medgyessy seemed to be a calm guy who is just running the affairs in a very, how to say, rather calm manner. Orbán's mindset totally changed as a result of this election, and what he learned is that no, with this center-right strategy he's simply unable to win the election. From 2003-2004 he started to turn into a more populist direction.
When we got to the EU in 2004, very soon we had to face the financial crisis, which few people understand how important it was, because we were finally there. We expected all the good things coming, and many of this came, like the free movement of people, the single market. I think there were very visible developments. But first of all, the hoped good life has not reached us. It was not that we joined and the other day Hungary was much more rich and people lived much better. So that was not such a direct impact.
Azt lehet látni és azt tapasztaljuk, hogy miközben a rendszerváltozás egyik nagy ígérete az volt, hogy utolérjük Nyugat-Európát egy nagyon rövidebb 10-15 éven belül. Ma már látszik az, hogy a bérek tekintetében sem a német, sem az osztrák bérek nem elérhetőek Magyarországon. Most már a politika is inkább arra fókuszál, hogy gyakorlatilag is a közgazdasági szakemberek is arra azt a véleményt fogalmazzák meg, hogy talán soha nem fogjuk utolérni ezt a bérszínvonalat, hanem mindig egy lényegesen alacsonyabb színvonalú bérek lesznek Magyarországon.
Nem egyszerű megszerezni. Hallgassák csak.
In 2004, Péter Medgyessy loses the confidence of the socialist to liberal coalition partners after it emerges that he had been an informer for the former security state apparatus. The new Prime Minister is a younger man with business experience, Ferenc Gyurcsány. But under the socialists, Hungary has begun to practice a cynical form of stop-go economics. When Gyurcsány takes over as the shaky coalition's new Prime Minister, he abandons the fiscal restrictions of his predecessor. In 2006, his government wins another majority. Viktor Orbán, it seems, is on the ropes.
A mi csoportot hogy fogja végezni, azt tudom nektek mondani. Nem tudunk még hetekig elemezni, gyerekek. Nem tudunk.
A MSN-en kaptam az üzenetet, ami egy már azóta megszűnt chat program, és hát ebből látszik, hogy ez milyen régen történt, és akkor ment körbe egy üzenet, hogy valami történik itt a téren. Nagy robbanások voltak. Ez később derült ki, hogy ez egy autó volt, amit itt felgyújtottak. Az autónak a benzintartálya pukkant egy nagyot, és akkor az egész tömeg visszaindult ide a tévé elé. És akkor indult meg az a másfél-két órás ostrom, ami tulajdonképpen azzal végződött, hogy a rendőrök furcsa módon nem nagyon védték meg ezt az épületet. Próbálkoztak, de ha itt egy nagyon kemény, határozott, agresszív fellépés lett volna, én férfiasan bevallom, hogy mi elszaladtunk volna, a nagy részünk.
They were determined to do something. That's what I felt. And it turned out that they did. Of course, at that point, it was not clear how it was spontaneous, how it was organized, who organized what.
Magyarországon kibontakozóban volt egy gazdasági válság, ami megelőzte a 2008-as nagy gazdasági világválságot. Itt már akkor komoly gazdasági problémák, magas infláció és egyre növekvő munkanélküliség volt. Tehát rengeteg olyan probléma is volt, ami önmagában is komoly elégedetlenséget keltett. Másrészt pedig volt egy több évtizedes, akkor már több mint 15 éves megosztottság és egy feszültség, ami ugye abból fakad, hogy 1990 után nem történt meg az egykori 89 előtti kommunista diktatúra működtetőinek, felelőseinek a számonkérése. Senkit sem büntettek meg, ezért ágyban párnák közt haltak meg olyan idős emberek, akik nagyon sok ember haláláért voltak 30-40 évvel azelőtt felelősek. Ez sok embert idegesített, nagyon sok emberben ez nagy feszültséget keltett. Ráadásul ugye 2002 óta az a Magyar Szocialista Párt volt kormányon, ami ennek a kommunista pártnak az utódpártja volt. Tehát ebben ez a nagy társadalmi megosztottság is benne volt. Én azt mondanám, hogy szerintem 1990 óta ültünk egy lőporos hordón, ami tele volt robbanóanyaggal, és ez a szikra robbantotta be. Az, hogy a miniszterelnök a saját hangján mondja, hogy hazudik.
When I spent time among those people in the like early 2000 years of early 2000, their idea came from the idea of transition, and they were completely disappointed about the transition in Hungary, the post-communist transition in Hungary.
Magyarországi helyzetet csak egy forradalom tudná megoldani. Mi letisztázna az egész helyzetet? Hát amit 90-ben elloptak forradalmat, azt lerendezni. Tehát a bűnösök felelősségre vonását. Hát ilyen emberek ne jöjjenek vissza, 40 évig a kommunizmus szolgálták, most meg osztják nekem az észt, hogy mi a demokrácia. Tehát ez nem érzem fair dolognak.
És hogy képzeled ezt a forradalmat?
Hát egy forradalmat hogy lehet elképzelni?
They were committed to this ideology, and they were active. They had been active in this far-right subculture, or radical right-wing subculture, since the early 90s.
Always, actually, during the communist period, there were movements, there were individuals who believed in this kind of ideology. Of course, they were not like explicit about that because of the system. Those movements and parties emerged right after the regime change. But then I would make a distinction between like traditional far-right movements in the 90s in Hungary and like this kind of new kind of far-right which emerged in the middle of the first decade of the 2000s. And when we are talking about the rise of this kind of new far-right movement, then the main actor we have to talk about is Jobbik, the far-right party, which was formed in the beginning of the 2000s, but which actually became a significant political force only like in the middle of the 2000s. In 2006, they ran the elections together with the kind of an old school traditional far-right party, which is called MIEP, and which has almost disappeared since then from the political scene. And in this election, the two parties gained like 2.2% in the election. So it was kind of insignificant force at that time. But like after the elections in 2006, Jobbik gained more and more popular support and became a very significant party. In 2009, in the European Parliament elections, in this year, Jobbik gained 14% of the votes. So when we are talking about the emergence of this new style of the far right in Hungary, I think we have to take into consideration a lot of factors which contributed to these developments. And one of these factors, or a couple of these factors, of course, are related to social economic factors rooted in the economic developments or economic transitions.
And it was the members of Jobbik who started the movement of the Hungarian Guard. And the members of the Hungarian Guard organized rallies, anti-gypsy rallies, in villages, and that's how they became very well known all over Hungary, all over the country. Of course, they are not from the elite. So these people come from lower middle class social groups, I would say. the social groups which did not get enough opportunities, and they could not see the possibility of mobility.
A socialist-led government yet again adopts an austerity package. The timing is disastrous. Hungary is already in deep retrenchment when a global recession hits hard. The Socialist Party loses confidence in Gyurcsány. In 2009, the governing coalition collapses. A caretaker technocratic administration led by Gordon Boynai staggers on, forced to rely on EU and IMF emergency funding, and is obliged to inflict austerity as a condition of access to emergency funds.
That the socialists and the liberals, at least that's what they call themselves, they were just neoliberals in the most plain sense, you know, the most past 1990 sense. The austerity measures were their Bible, and some sort of infrastructural expansion was their breakfast. And of course, we do have to remind ourselves that it was the socialist mayor who first introduced the areas that restricted homelessness. Yeah, the criminalization of homelessness started with the Socialist Party. The filtration of major cities started with the Socialist Party. Massive corruption issues made the bed for the two-thirds majority, the first two-thirds majority of the Fidesz government. Viktor Orbán would never be in place without the socialists.
I had this fear that, oh, maybe it wouldn't be that good if they got two-thirds majority because it can be dangerous. But, and I think many had this idea, but still they got it, and I wasn't surprised.